Mitch Lang, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Steak Light Experience. Been a long time listener, and pleasure to be here.
The unconventional. Normally I eat the steak before, but I had some premium Wagyu steak from yesterday that you tucked into, which is probably better than what most people have got, to be honest.
And that chimichurri as well. That's bomb fire, bro.
You mentioned before that a lot of these chats that I do are pretty deep and meaningful. Nonetheless, I still like to go back to people's childhood, and a lot of that's done by Instagram these days, which is perfect. So I went back and I couldn't really find anything that stood out. You just looked like you had like a normal childhood. There was a bit of graffiti going on.
Yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, of course.
What's but you still mentioned to me on the phone that you weren't like a regular kid. From what wasn't portrayed on Instagram, what did you mean when you said that?
I think just sort of like growing up, I was obviously like a regular kid in terms of, like I like sport, I like hanging out with friends, doing all sort of that stuff. But I just feel like, like when I was sort of growing up, like I wasn't, I guess, sticking to the status quo of, I guess, what maybe people like, around my friendship group or my age would sort of be doing, right? So I feel like in that sense, I was just, a little bit different. Like I was always sort of, interested in maybe like, doing different things to what I guess a lot of my, bulk of my friendship group was doing.
You said you studied entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
At MIT.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
But you didn't, you were like, maybe I should go out and just be one instead of actually studying it. Yeah,
correct. So I went to MIT to study on entrepreneurship after I finished school. Took a gap year, mainly because my entire family, pretty heavy on like university. They sort of graduated and sort of went to like Melbourne Uni and sort of other prestigious places like that. And it was more like I just wanted to give university a go, pretty much for my old man, because I was like, all right, like when my parents grew up and most of my parents grew up, that was the sort of only route that you'd take. You'd go to university, you'd get a degree, and then you'd go into the sort of job or the profession that you wanted, right? But in today's day and age, I find it completely different, right? Like, you don't need to go to university to, go somewhere or get a job or do something. There's plenty of other angles to do that. But I thought, okay, I'm just going to give university a go for my old man. So I had to look at the sort of courses to do. Entrepreneurship sort of, stuck out to me because my dad's a, entrepreneur, and I thought, all right, I'll give it a go. So gave it a go, did it for a semester, got to the exam period. And I just, I thought I was just, I knew I was just sort of cramming for these exams. I was going in one year, out the other. And then that was it, I'd like passed the exam and I thought, great, you asked me a question in that exam that I just did. And if I tried to answer it, I'd give you a completely different answer because it wasn't computing. You know what I mean? I was just learning it for the sake of it. So I thought, you know what, like if I want to be an entrepreneur, like why should I be learning, how to be one in a classroom? If I want to be one, I should just go out and be one.
It's funny how many kids have that mindset, but perhaps aren't even encouraged to pursue it. Because I'm not sure how you feel about this, but when I was at school, there were things that I did and it didn't even make sense. And I would cram for exams, and as soon as it ended, forget about it.
Yeah.
Like I may as well not even have done that because I forgot about it straight away.
Yeah.
But I don't see, and you talked about the culture before, I don't see that sort of mindset being encouraged with a lot of kids, and maybe that's changing. I'm not sure, but I don't know. It's an interesting point.
Yeah, well, I feel like, look, I was happy that I went to uni and I was happy that I gave it a go, just for the sake of, I can tick that off. If I ever like look back in 5-10 years and go, oh, maybe if I went to university, maybe if I tried something, I might be in like a different position. But yeah, I just felt like, look, learning within a classroom, reading a textbook, like it wasn't the way that I learned, you know what I mean? And I think that sort of touches on, I guess, growing up, not being like a regular kid, in terms of that, where I guess I saw a lot of people, within the school program, thriving at, being in the classroom, cramming for exams, doing that. But it wasn't my way of learning, it just didn't really, it didn't really work on me, that sort of system,
Do you feel different?
I don't feel different, you know?
Did you at that time?
Did I?
Yeah.
I mean, look, at that time, you know, I think I was just a kid, you know what I mean? I think everyone's sort of, finding themselves, you know, at that age. So it wasn't like I thought, oh, I'm different, or I'm not like as good as them. I just thought, oh, you know, I'm just not into that, you know?
Yeah. Was there something or a turning point that made you realize that it wasn't for you?
I mean, probably not like a turning point. Hey, like I reckon it was just probably, you know, when you get to like year like 11, right, and you're doing, you know, your sort of 3, 4 and your VCE, and you sort of see, I guess, just the sort of stress on everyone's faces, you know, everyone's, you know, like cramming, you know, to get, you know, a certain score to get into this, you know, university degree, right? And it's like, okay, cool. And it's like, you know, how do you know that you want to even do that? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay, well, like, you know, I know this about it and I think it's really fun. It's like, awesome. But I just find being, you know, 17 years old, 18 years old, like, you know, do you really know what you want to do 5 years from then? And I guess it's all about, you know, giving something a go, right? But to say, okay, well, if you want to give this a go, you need to get this certain score to do that, you know? I find that sort of part of it, you know, could be a little bit, you know, a little bit backwards.
Do you see a lot of kids, or do you deal with a lot of kids that come to you that are at that age?
What do you mean by like
at 17, 18 at a crossroads? Because I feel like it's almost promoted or encouraged that you should know what you want to do at that age.
Yeah, I mean, I guess through sort of like what I do, like there's a lot of people that sort of play within, you know, my sort of events, tournaments and stuff that, you know, I guess wouldn't even get that opportunity to even do a, you know, VCE, for example, you know? So I think majority of kids probably don't know what they want to do, but I think the point I'm trying to make is like the stress that, you know, gets put on you, you know, at that age of, you know, hey, like you need to like get this score to do this. When it's really like, you know, do you know what you want to do at that stage? You know, like, do you really know, you know, where where you want to direct your life at that point, you know?
I saw you say basketball's always been a strong passion of mine, and much like everyone else, I dreamt of a career in basketball. Have you been doing that? Had you been doing that for your whole life?
So I guess King of the Court started in 2019, right? So I graduated school 2016. I guess.
How did it start? And what is it?
Great question. So look, I've been playing basketball since I was probably like 8 years old. You know, always absolutely loved it. You know, domestic leagues. I've been playing in like, you know, 2-3 teams, you know, a week since I was young. I sort of stopped the representative basketball side when I was at under 18. So I guess that's when it makes a leap to be a little bit more sort of serious in like the basketball scene. And if you sort of know like the amount of traveling that goes into driving around to different stadiums and the coaches being selected, you know, it does get very real at that under 18 level when you're, you know, going to go from there to youth league. And I guess, look, I didn't get on with coaches very well. You know, I sort of liked running my own show, you know, at like, you know, in like a way.
What did that look like?
I guess it was just more like, you know, I love the game. I love to play the game, you know, and I think I was much more attracted to, I guess, the street style of play where, you know, it's more unorganized, you know, it's not as formal, you know, it's like you don't have coaches breathing down your neck, you know, there's not certain players. And I think at the heart, you know, that is basketball, but at the same time, there's a whole nother world, right? And I think, yeah, so I graduated 2016, moved to Carlton. And yeah, I started just playing pickup games at Carlton Gardens, man. Like that was where it all sort of began. There was chain nets behind the museum. The court didn't have a 3-point line, just a key. Like it was legit, right? It was just, you know, you'd go there, you'd play pickup. You got people from all walks of life, and that's where it all sort of started. I guess my love for street ball, but as well, I guess sort of my sort of passion for basketball was like, you know, reignited, and like. I think I say that because I was obviously very into, you know, organised basketball, you know, until under 18s. I was playing for a few teams a week, always playing, right? But then I guess, you know, when I fell a bit out of love with, I guess, you know, the formalities of, you know, representative basketball, it was like, okay, like I still love basketball, but if I'm not playing, you know, in these formal games, like where am I going to hoop? And I was like, all right, down at the park. So 2019, I started just hooping there. And then I thought, damn, like we should run a tournament here, or like, you know, like there's scope to bring people together at this space. and like we can start hooping. And that was pretty much where, you know, King of the Court was born at Carlton Gardens, and that's where we had our first event.
When did you realize you were onto something?
I'm gonna say that, like, the second event was really when, you know, it sort of hit. So I'll run you through it. I'll set the scene. So it was the first 3 events that we ran were at Carlton Gardens. So 2019 was the first event, and then COVID happened, right? So everyone was sort of locked down. So right before COVID, like, we sort of ran the first event, and we had 12 teams. About 8 of the teams were all pretty much my mates. It cost about $40 a team to play. The prize money was $400. So if you do the math, I'm already taking a loss with the teams that are actually paying to play and the prize money that I'm giving out, right? We had a couple clipboards. We had 2 UE booms that we linked up. I had like a megaphone. I was walking around with this like Santa hat because it was around Christmas time. And yeah, man, we were just hooping. So like we were playing 3-on-3. It was 2s and 1s. With street ball, right, like the games aren't timed. So like, unlike regular 3-on-3 FIBA or like, you know, organized basketball, there's no time limit, right? So I can't really set up, you know, a pretty formal, you know, schedule for the day because the games aren't timed. So essentially, you know, we just started hooping, and it was like after that first event, I had a lot of people, you know, we had this Instagram page that was like, I don't know, 45 followers on it. You know, it was nothing big, right? And there was about maybe max, I reckon, like 80 people in like attendance, including players with some, you know, random spectators, friends and family. Pretty much just all the boys on the side, you know, drinking beers, coming down to this basketball event that, you know, their mate Mitch has run. And then, yeah, so COVID happened, and then we were all locked down for a bit. And I thought, okay, like, we've got this, you know, end of this lockdown. So you know how we had like the snap lockdowns and we had, you know, that sort of break. I was like, cool, let's actually run an event within this snap lockdown. So, you know, I went and bought a bunch of hand sanitizer, taped them up to the rims, opened up the registration for it, and we had like 18 teams at that next one. So we had 6 more teams, right? I made the prize money $500. I think I charged $60 a team, so it cost, you know, $20 more. So we were in the green like for that, but like, you know, I still had to sort of get like, you know, a DJ down with some decks. So like I borrowed like my mate's generator. We brought that down, set the generator up, you know, a couple marquees. We had all these snags, right? I was like, I want to put on like a free sausage sizzle, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, mad. Bring down these snags, you know, got the boys down, you know. Nettie Baxter was actually down there. I know he's been on the show, but he was like down there cooking them up. And it was funny, right? We started cooking them up, you know, advertising, you know, I'm yelling out in the mic, we got these free snags, like everyone, you know, hang around. The first question I got asked was from one of the Somalian fellas that I was mates with. He goes, yeah, like, are these halal, bro? And it hadn't even crossed my mind, right, at that point. You know, I was young, right? I was, you know, 19 years old, run this event, and I was like, nah, they're not. And he's like, damn, like, you know, a lot of us aren't gonna be able to eat these. And I was like, damn, like, there goes that. Like, it just didn't cross my mind, right? Yeah. Anyway, look, other than that, you know, the second event went well and it was great, you know, great turnout.
At that, so are you going to keep going?
Yeah,
Keep going.
Yeah. Is that right? Yeah.
Going.
So like at that time, like that event went well, right? I'm just still answering this sort of question about when I realized I was sort of onto something, and that went well, and it was like cool. So we had another lockdown after that, then we had another break snap lockdown. I thought, all right, the third one, you know, we're gonna run this one back. Open up Rego, and we had like 24 teams register, and like that's when I was like, all right, like 24 teams now. The 8 teams that played at the start, which were like all my friends, like none of them are playing now. Like these are all just complete, you know, people within the scene, right? So they're all down there playing. I've gone, all right, I'm going to put on another, you know, free sausage sizzle. So what did I do? Went down to the butcher. Was like, all right, I need halal snags, yeah? So I bought a bunch of halal snags, hit up my mate, Yusuf Kufau, if he's going to listen to this. He'll like remember this clearly. But he walked up to me, like the first thing he said was like, snags. And I said, don't worry, bro, like this time, they're halal, right? And yeah, it was really funny. But look, it was at that third event. It was at Carlton Gardens still. It was still a complete renegade. There were no permits. It was just rock up. I think I made about maybe $400 off the second event. So I used that money to buy a generator, so I didn't have to borrow my mates. So I was like, bought a generator and then like set that up. And that was when we had, you know, there was like, we had like police come down because there were so many people there. There were probably like, you know, 300 people in the park. Bunch of families, kids, everyone playing. Like the police came down, like, hey, you know, where's your permit? And I was like, hey, look, dude, like, I didn't know this many people were actually going to be in it. And he said, look, man, we're looking around. Everyone's having a good time. Like, we're not going to bust your balls. Like, it's all good. You know, just make sure you clean up. And I was like, mad. then like the sheriff came down, and then like it was the park ranger as well came down, and like she's even gone, look, this day, like today, I'm just gonna let it slide. But like if you do this again, like you're gonna get fined. And I was like, okay, cool. So it was like that was probably the turning point for me. Like the third event when it's like I'm now getting recognition from people outside of my group of friends. But now it's like, okay, I'm gonna need to go legit with this. Like it can't be a renegade where we just rock up at the park again, you know?
What were you doing at that time? Like for work, or like were you just
Nah, so at that time I was actually in the food and beverage industry. Okay. I was working at the Melbourne Museum, and I was I was like a sort of functions manager there.
So you could say you were still figuring out what you wanted to do.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah. So I just gotten back from like a gap year. So I went to Europe for about 6 months of the year.
How important was that?
Oh, that was great. I mean, I'd sort of recommend that to anyone to sort of, in terms of travel, like finding yourself, but like, getting out of your comfort zone, whether it's solo or sort of with friends. I'd probably recommend going with friends if you're a bit younger. But I think, I learned a lot from just sort of being, out of my comfort zone and just sort of in unfamiliar territory, right?
It's powerful, isn't it?
Very.
I did 3 months when I was 19 in Asia.
Crazy.
So good.
Like
and
what, Thailand, Cambodia?
Thailand,
yeah.
Vietnam. And I walked into this hostel and I was shitting myself the first night. And you just walk in like, everyone else is in the same spot. Why was I so scared? And then the thing with Vietnam is that that's a good place to start, I think, for people, is that you often meet people that are going in the same direction. So you just...
you sort of go with them.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, you're right, bro.
So yeah, you're still figuring out what you wanted to do.
Yeah, big time. And I think like that sort of touches on, I guess, getting back from, that sort of trip in Europe and then going to uni just to make sure I'd sort of at least tick that off, for my own sake, but also because I knew, it'd make my dad pretty happy, because he's gone through that university system, and I think most of our parents have, but it's like, just to sort of go there and say, okay, I've sort of ticked that off, and then going, you know what, like if I want to be an entrepreneur, I don't need to learn about being one. I should just start something. And it was literally about 2 weeks after I dropped out, I said, I made the Instagram for King of the Court and just sort of, this is what I'm going to do.
We talked about all in on the phone.
Yeah.
So is that a good representation of what it means to go all in, or would you consider that all in at that stage? Like, were you, that's it, I'm done. Like this is going to the moon.
Nah, I wouldn't consider that all in. I'd say it's probably like 1 foot in. I guess, like you have to probably, walk before you can run. And I think for me, it was very much a passion project. It was very much like, I like basketball. I'm really enjoying playing street ball. It's sort of igniting my love for it again. There's a hunger for it. I'd always been into sort of things like And One, when I was younger, and just sort of, the whole street scene. I was, fascinated by like Rucker Park in New York, and just, I was always into that sort of scene. So it was like, King of the Court. And I mean, for people that don't know, right, like King of the Court, like it refers to a one-on-one game of basketball. So like if I was to rock up to, the park and it was me and you there, Das, and I was like, okay, let's play King of the Court. Who's the King of the Court? That means let's play one-on-one, right? And that's, I guess, the heart of King of the Court. It's a really powerful term in street basketball in terms of like rocking up to a park and then just sort of hooping, And I think making the Instagram, as I said, it was a passion project. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this because I think that there's some legs on this and it's going to make me happy. Did I know at that time how happy it would make me? Did I know at that time, how big it could get? Not at all.
I think I touched on the fact that it's similar to my thing as well. Like it, you encourage people to take the dive in, but it's often, or it can be as easy as just finding something that you're interested in. And it doesn't have to be the biggest thing in the world when you start it. But that just comes back to what we were saying before about, like, if you find something that you enjoy, often it's just a case of just starting.
For sure.
And I'm sure, I think you said a post like, if it continues to grow, like you said, you use the word, if it continues to grow. Of course it continued to grow. But at that time, you never would have thought it would get to where it got to now.
Yeah, no way. Yeah. And like, I think I think as well, like, I had like a lot of people in like my sort of corner in my ear, I guess, like I've got a pretty, good sort of group of, close friends, great family, but people sort of saying, yeah, like this is, you're onto something here,
Mm-hmm.
And I think like you love hearing that, just about anything, but it also sort of puts the pressure on you, right?
For sure.
And like, cause you go, okay, like if everyone believes that, I'm onto something, this is going to be really big, then shit, I better make this pretty big, right?
Would you call that self-doubt?
I guess, you know what? I just call it anxiety.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, you know what? Levels of, being anxious, anxiety is good. Levels of stress is good because it means that you care about what you're doing. Not necessarily, I guess, caring about letting people down or, like not being good enough. But, if you don't, if you care about something, it's going to stress you out because you really want to do well, for your own sake, I find.
How did anxiety play a role in building what you've built?
I think sort of growing up, right, you always want to be successful, right? You know what I mean? Like you want to be happy, you want to be healthy, you want to be like financially free, right? I think those three are probably they're probably the big three, right? They're probably like, the triangle of life. If you're happy, that's great. If you're healthy, you got no health problems, awesome. And if you're financially free, it doesn't mean that you need to be, rich, but if you're financially free to do what you want to do, those are like the three big things, yeah? And I think, I've always had a chip on my shoulder about, like those three things I really want to achieve, and I think not taking this regular route of going to university, getting a degree, getting me into a job that I know that this is going to help me get there. It's like that path is there. That path is there to walk because people have done it before. You know what you're up against. You know what you're looking at. Where I think, I've sort of gone for, all right, hey, king of the court makes me happy. And I see how happy it makes other people. And I'm going to make this work. And I think not having that sure thing, you're not having that piece of paper behind me say, this is what I've done for the last 6 years. Like this is like the time that I've taken to get, this piece of paper that qualifies me to do this. And king of the court doesn't necessarily, I've got a great Instagram. You know what I mean? I've got some great content, some awesome photos, some great memories. But there's no, proven blueprint that I can pull out and read and go, okay, what do I do next? It's all pretty much, up to how hard I want to push it and like, how far do I want to try and take it, not knowing, where the ceiling is or like, where it can get me.
You talked about great memories. Is there something that stands out in the early days that you look back on and smile?
I mean, there's countless things, right? I think probably like one of the biggest things for me was, the level up of the event. So, sort of, going from, I'd like to give, Summer Jam a shout out, right? So like Paran Summer Jam, I'm an MC there, great friends with Daniel and Eamon, shout out to the other MCs there, Daryl, Tater, Eagle. It's, Summer Jam's a crazy one for me, right? Because I used to attend their events. And if you don't know what Summer Jam is, it's a 5-on-5 street ball tournament, originated in Paran. It's been going since 2012. It's crazy stuff. And I used to go there, right? I used to go there sort of just as a person in the crowd, as a spectator, basketball lover, right? And I was in there in the crowd and I'd always just be sort of just admiring this sort of event, right? And I remember sort of being there, you'd sort of just pull up and I guess you sort of have people at these events who they might not be there for the basketball, but they're there to be seen. They're stepping out, they got their good fits on, like they're there, and like that makes street ball events what they are, the people that sort of go there. And I think something that sort of stands out to me that I sort of always sort of look sort of back on is, I was never an MC, I was never an events manager. It was never, written in the stars for me, right? Like I never had training to do that. And I sort of, went to these events like Summer Jam and then, I started King of the Court and then we started collaborating and then now I sort of, MC at, the last, 4 or 5 Summer Jams. Obviously I MC all of my events, but I just sort of, think back to when I used to sort of attend these events as someone in the crowd, I had people sort of walk straight past me, like that's fine. Like they don't know me, I don't know you, And now it's like, I'm like center court with the mic, dapping up the people sitting courtside, people walking past me saying, hey bro, great job, man, you're killing it out there. Like, like you're doing really well. And it's sort of like this juxtaposition of like, it's not like I've got some mad basketball rep, you know what I mean? It's like not like the best way to probably get a reputation in the basketball scene is you hoop. right? Like you're good at basketball, you know, you go represent a team. Like you have a mad highlight reel. Like I don't necessarily have that, you know. I like to say that I can hoop, you know, when it comes to street ball, but it's like I never had that backing, right? And it's like to see, I guess, King of the Court, you know, to sort of, you know, put me in the position that I'm in as like an MC, but as like, you know, just being able to be out there and literally do like what I love, which is pretty much just talking shit, but like be involved with the basketball scene, you know?
I want to know more about you actually taking it to the next level. What was going through your head? And I always go off like excitement.
Right.
Like do what makes you excited. And I'm in that stage with this thing at the moment. Like I can't, you know, it excites me. And I'm assuming that would have propelled you at the start. I'm assuming like
for sure.
Far out, like this is something. But I want to know more. Like when you were like, oh, I got to get a permit.
Yeah.
I've got to make it legit. Like, were you 7 days a week? Let's go.
Nah, so look, it's great because it literally propels from that exact moment of when, you know, the park ranger said to me, Cardi Guard said, hey mate, if you do this again, we're going to fine you. Like you need to get permits for this. Like this isn't just your mates together in a park playing ball. You got 300 people here, right? Mm-hmm. Like where's your, you know, where's your swims? You know what I mean? Like all sort of that stuff, right? And so what sort of happened is after that event, you know, that was when, you know, that was the turning point of me going, I'm on something here, you know, like this is something bigger. How do I make it bigger? So opportunities just sort of present themselves to you, right? And it's up to you if you want to grab it. And what happened is this sort of brings me to the fourth event, King of the Court 4. It was in Queensbridge in the city. What happened it's Hickory and Time and Place, some pretty established building, you know, companies. They built a building called the Queensbridge building, but they were waiting for permits to be approved. So while they were waiting, they actually built a basketball court like on like the ground level. Like they concreted it out, built a basketball court, got Reco Rain to paint it, sick spot. Right? It was like New York vibes, it was mad. Essentially, one of their representatives was at that event at Carlton Gardens, right? He'd clocked me, he'd clocked the Instagram, sent me a message, said, hey mate, could we catch up for a coffee? I represent Hickory and Time and Place. We've just built this court and we're trying to activate it. You look like you'd be the right man to sort of approach, right? This is the first time that I'd had any sort of legitimate meeting with anyone about what I was doing. Like it was like, oh, I might go down to Kicks 101 and get, you know, some freebies to give away to the kids, you know, maybe like a ball or whatever. This is like, we've seen what you're doing. We think, you know, we'd like to somewhat employ you, you know, contract you, right? Mm-hmm. So I went down, met this guy, Daniel Denise, absolute legend, still in contact with him to this day. And we sort of caught up and he said, mate, like the event was sick. Like, you know, like, did you have any permits for that? And I was like, yeah, like, don't worry, mate. Like, we're onto it, you know? And I was sort of honest with him saying, look, you know, this at the time was still a passion project for me. You know, I'm just doing this because I honestly love it, right? And he was like, all right, cool. So, like, we've got a budget and, you know, here's the budget and we want to activate this court. Like, can you do it? And it was the first time that I've gone, like, there are a few zeros on there, you know what I mean? Like this is like, all right, I made $500 and I bought a generator.
So that was money for you.
That was money to like run the event. They said, we want to contract you. Can you run King of the Court 4 and can you do it here? This is how much money you can use to run it. And in the past, I'm relying on team entry. You know, I'm relying on selling a few t-shirts. Like I'm relying on just scraping stuff together as I could. And like this was a time when I was like, okay, there are brands out there who, if they believe in what you're doing and they believe that you can benefit them and you can, you know, do stuff for them, like they're going to help you do what you want to do. So I'd say that was the first time I thought, okay, you know, was it a little bit daunting for me to go, okay, so now if something goes wrong with the event, it's no longer just me that I'm letting down. There's a whole nother aspect to it.
You said before pressure from other people. So did that add another layer of...
100%, right?
Was it stressful?
It was, look, the most stressful thing about doing what I do is the weather, right? Yeah. Because if it rains, that's it.
I saw
right?
you say that, yeah.
And like, you know, that's number one. Like when I'm on like, you know, event timetable 2 months out, I'm checking the extended forecast like twice a day. Like I'm 2 months out. It's Melbourne. It doesn't even matter if it's 2 days out, right?
That can't be legit.
Yeah.
2 weeks. The 2 month one is crazy.
Okay, look, maybe not twice a day, but I'm telling you.
No, but I mean, surely.
Oh, yeah.
Those forecasts are wrong. Yeah.
Right? So wrong, right? Yeah. But it's pretty much like one of those things where it's like, you know, that was a time I was like, okay, this can now become a lot more legitimate. And there's, brands looking to get involved with sort of what I'm doing, right? So that was when I said, okay, maybe I need to put some more time, into this. So I started giving more of my time to it. It wasn't like, maybe like after work, I'd sort of just jump on and, do like a couple hours. It was like, all right, throughout the day, I'm constantly thinking about it. I'm constantly planning it. I'm putting aside time to set up meetings, with people, getting advice from people, consulting with people that I know, have done this before or are within, the event scene. They deal with partnerships. Like it became more of like, this is a passion project, so let's treat this like a business. Like let's actually treat this like I can put in a lot of time and, there may be a reward for the time that I put in, but, it's still not guaranteed. But like how good can I make this, right? So I ran that event for them and it was a great success. It was actually 41 degrees that day. So it didn't matter about the rain at all. It was actually too hot to, a point. But I ran that event for them and it was an awesome event. Like it was the turnout, the people there, like it was great. Like Hickory time and place, like they were ecstatic. Like it just sort of activated the event and gave us some awesome content, right? Then it sort of led on to, all right, how am I going to level up from here? Like I've now branched out of Carlton because it was actually called King of the Court Carlton first, right? 3 events in Carlton. Now I've gone to Queensbridge. So it was okay. Like now we've gone to Queensbridge, we've gone to the city, we've sort of outbranched. Like how do I now like level it up? And to that point, I was pretty like Carlton represent, like North Side. Like this is the North Side street ball tournament, and I was like, okay, I'm going to bring it back to Carlton. But I ran into a bit of a roadblock, and I guess this is sort of like some adversity. My biggest play was Carlton Gardens. Now, if you've been there, it's a beautiful park. The basketball court, you've got traffic walking through. Street ball, when I think of street ball, I think about New York, Rucker Park, city skyline. Like that's street ball, What Carlton Gardens offered was something completely different. Still street ball, chain nets, but you're in a park setting. And it was like, I was holding on to that being the home ground. Like that was it. So I've gone, okay, I've got to get a permit, right? So I've gone, applied for some permits, and they just completely vetoed me. They said, look, it's a heritage listed park. If you want to run your events here, you can't have music, you can't have a PA system, you can't have grandstands, you can't have food trucks, you can't do anything. So I said, so I can run an event, but it's going to be like a church. And they were like, yeah. So I thought, well, I can't do that. You know what I mean? So that was probably one of the biggest roadblocks I encountered was like the identity of what I'd created. I no longer could run the event there.
You said an interesting thing before when you talked about the brands and someone believing in you. And I said before, I'm waiting for that to happen to me. So I can't help but ask what it was like for you.
It was, I think, look, so after that sort of fourth event, it was like, okay, like this is cool, but it'd be pretty cool to get, a clothing brand, right? Or like, like why not, like building company, awesome. They had their like, agenda of activating that corp. What if I got a brand, involved with King of the Court, like a basketball brand, like I don't know, like a Jordan or like a Nike, right? Something like that, Anyway, so like we ran like the fifth event and we couldn't do it at Carlton Gardens. So we ran it at Carlton Commission Flats, Neil Street Reserve, awesome park, right? And I think this sort of leads on to, I guess King of the Court becoming a lot more legit so I ran the tournament there and it was absolutely awesome. Still no sort of major sort of sponsors, but it was like 26 teams, majority NBL 1 players. The prize money was increased to about, $1,500. It was like, it was becoming a lot more legit, right? Anyway, about 2 months after the event, I had Daniel Denise hit me up. So he was the guy that worked for Queensbridge, right? He said, man, like we've got NBA Australia hitting us up. They want to paint the court in Queensbridge, but we can't do it because we're about to, knock it down. We're going to start building. So I thought if there's anyone to, get the job done, it's you. So he introed me to NBA Australia and I'm going, okay, cool. So now I'm speaking to NBA Australia, the biggest basketball league in the world, and they're representative here in Australia. And I sort of started chatting to them and like they had this idea that like they wanted to give back to the community and they wanted to actually paint a court. And I was like, dope, we're painting Carlton. Like it's just happening, right? So I hit up City of Melbourne, organised everything, and it was pretty much going to happen. And then, for some reason, the plan got vetoed by the City of Melbourne. They just said, look, we just can't do it, and that really hurt me, right? I was like, damn, like, okay, like, why can't you do it? Oh, well, you know, there's probably reasons that I probably shouldn't sort of get into here, and like I won't, you know, to sort of speak, you know, poorly on them. But I think it was sort of, you know, it sort of shot me in the gut to think that, okay, we can't paint this court, which is going to level up the entire space and put more eyes on street basketball, but we can't do it. So I said, okay, how can I still get something done? So that's when I went to RMIT, right? And I hit up RMIT and I said, hey, I've got this, you know, proposition. NBA Australia wants to activate the court. They want to do something dope. Can we paint the court at RMIT, A Beckett Urban Square, like one of the meccas of street ball? And they said, look, we'd love to, but we've got so many lines on the court that we actually can't paint it. But we've got a massive fence. So if you want to paint like the wall, we can do that. So I said, yeah, cool. Let's do that. So organised that, painted this massive mural. It had all the sort of Australian basketball players' names like on there. You know, Dellavedova, Jack White, you know, Thibault, everyone's up there, you know. And it's looking mad. Get sort of painted. And then from that, it was, okay, let's run King of the Court 6 here, right? Like, you know, now we've sort of set the scene, we've sort of set the stage. Let's sort of, you know, do that. And then NBA Australia put out a couple of videos, and it was like me sort of, you know, on NBA Australia's Instagram, on their website, you know, sort of speaking, I'm going, that's a pretty big brand. And like, you know, what, like King of the Court, you know, founder sort of on there, like awesome, you know. And then now it sort of leads back to, I guess I've sort of set the scene about, you know, setting up that space. But then it was on to, okay, how can I now get some, you know, some brands to sort of back what I'm doing? And that was when we signed Nike and we signed Foot Locker to sponsor King of the Court 6.
Jeez.
So like it was a pipe dream of going, oh, you know, it'd be cool to have a brand like that involved. And then it was like, I'm sitting in a meeting, you know, with the executive from the brand, and they're going, okay, we're in the King of the Court 6, you know, energized by Nike and Foot Locker. It was, yeah, surreal, bro. Like I was like, okay, now it's not a passion project anymore. Like, you know, we've got brands involved, you know, backing this movement, you know.
What happened when that happened?
Oh, I probably jumped up and down a little bit, you know. It was like, okay, you know, like, you know, this is it, sort of getting somewhere.
It's one of those ones where the door closed.
Yeah. yeah. No, I think, honestly, I actually remember, you know, calling my dad, and I was like, hey, you know, we've just signed these brands. You know, King of the Court 6 it's going to be massive, right? And I think it was for me, you know, I always wanted to prove to him, you know, that, you know, what I was doing, you know, I guess it's seen as cool from an outer perspective from a lot of people. Like, it's a cool thing to be doing, you know, a street basketball event. Is it profitable? You know what I mean? Like, is there money in it? Or, you know, is there enough people that believe in it?
You're speaking to me.
Yeah, right? And I think, you know, I remember calling him, and like he was going, you know, he was like, crazy. Like, really? Like, you got Nike? Okay, damn. He goes, okay, well, you better get to work then, all right? I'm going, okay, cool, you know? And then, you know, that was the first time that we actually had like uniforms. You know, we had like these Nike teamwear uniforms, King of the Court on it, you know, Foot Locker sponsor, you know, like we had shoes for the Dunkies. Like, it was like, this is crazy. And, like, you know, the prize money went up. You know, we had, I think total prize money was about $5,000 total. You know, we had 28 teams sign up. You know, they were all paying, you know, a lot more than $40 a team, you know, for like the first one. But
what
it was, so like we were charging $150 a team at that point. And I think it was like, you know, that was sort of crazy because it's going, we got 28 teams, and like, I only, you know, at that point, I only knew, you know, a few of the teams that were actually playing. You know, it was a lot of people. You know, we had teams from Sydney fly down for it. We had teams from Adelaide come over. It was like, okay, like, we're really onto something here. Like, this is big. You know, we'd like introduced even like, you know, around like the actual culture. You know, we had some rappers, like live performers, you know, but yeah, King of the Court 6, it was, you know, that was when I really like looked around and thought, I'm in the middle of Melbourne City. You know, we've got like 600 people here, all from different walks of life. You know what I mean? Like, people that like basketball, people that didn't like basketball, you know, but, you know, I'm just there going, man, like, this is what, you know, this is sort of what I envisioned, like this could be, but still there was way more layers to add onto it, you know?
All it takes is commitment and confidence to start a movement, as well as a community gathering which accepts everyone. Words by you.
Yeah.
The vision, how important is that? Because, and I was going to ask the question just on what you were saying, like whether you believe in that whole manifestation thing. Like, were you envisioning all of that?
It's a great question. Like, I always believed that, like, you know, if you put enough hard work and like effort, love, time into something, like, if you really, like, if you put both feet in, you take that dive, you go, okay, like, I'm doing this regardless of what people think. I'm doing this regardless of like the dollar signs at the end of it. You know, I'm doing this because this makes me so fucking happy. Like this, like, you know, I'm doing this for me as much as this makes other people happy. I'm doing this because this is what I want to do. I think the power of that, you know, like that's gonna get you places. That's gonna get you in rooms that you may have thought you could never have been in. You know, that's that passion. So like, I really do feel like, you know, community's massive one. You know, like the whole community gathering. You know, in that sort of point, it's, you know, when you pull people together, you know, the power of unity of people together, but you know, for like the same reason, whether it's basketball, whether it's to be seen, you know, whether it's for the music, you know, whether it's, you know, for literally just being there, for getting out of the house, you know, you can change someone's day, you know, and like they can think, damn, like I didn't know Mitch, you know, but like King of the Court's sick, you know, or like, you know, I didn't know what King of the Court was. I don't know any of the players, but when I was in there, you know, like damn, I felt welcome, you know, I felt like, you know, like this was a really cool event, you know, and I think yeah, like that's, you know, passion holds a lot of power.
I think that energy, it can't not work out. And obviously there have been things that haven't worked out where people have that. But I think the large majority of people that follow their passion at the moment, with everything that's going on and the opportunity that's available by like having a personal brand and all that sort of stuff, is crazy. And I saw something the other day. It's like social media is now making more millionaires, and I don't think, like you said before, that at the start it should be about money, but like I'm assuming amongst all of that, there's a lot of people that have just followed their passion, and it indirectly has resulted in money and opportunity and abundance from just following that passion. I don't know what you believe or what you think about that.
Nah, I completely agree. I think, you know, if you chase the money, you know what I mean, you might get burnt. You know what I mean? If you chase the feeling, you know, like you chase the, you know, literally like chase the feeling, you know, chase what honestly makes you happy. And like, as you just said, like energy's a big one, you know what I mean? Like, and it's all about how you make people feel. Like if people can feel your passion, your energy, like your commitment, your drive, like they can feel how locked in you are on something, then they're going to feed off that. They're going to go, okay, you know, I want to be around him. I want to be around her. You know, no, you know what? I want to be involved with what they're doing. You know what I mean? How can we, you know, also do that? And I think, look, you know, money will always sort of come into it because, you know, unfortunately, you know, in today's day and age, the world we live in, like, you know, you sort of need money to do a lot of things, right? Do you need money to be happy? You know, not necessarily, but it helps, right? And I think one way to look at it is through that money aspect. I think another way is, all right, you want to put one foot in something, cool, you know, put it in. You want to put 2 feet in something and go, okay, I'm going to come out the other end of this, you know, regardless of the money. Like, is this for me? I'm going to go straight to the end of it, come out the other side, bang, have a look. All right, was this for me? You know, like was this the right thing for me? And you'll know it either wasn't, and you'd be like, okay, damn, that wasn't for me. But you know what? At least I did it to the full of my ability. I took that dive. It's not for me. All right, go back to the drawing board. But it's like, maybe you might come out of it and go, damn, this is for me. And like, okay, I'm happy with this, sick. All right, let's keep going. Let's make it bigger, you know? But if you put 1 foot in, you know, maybe I'll just sort of, you know, dip my toes in, you know what I mean? You're never going to know, one, if it's going to work, but one, if it's for you.
When you love what you do, you're driven by intrinsic motivation, which can lead to increased productivity and a greater willingness to invest time and effort, ultimately increasing your chances of financial reward. I think that sort of comes back to what you were saying. Don't chase the money though. Just start by chasing what you love to do. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've done.
Big time. Yeah. And I think, you know, leading on, you know, so it's sort of like, you're always going to, you know, there's always going to be challenges, right? And like, you know, obviously with, you know, King of the Court 6, I thought, damn, okay, like, you know, I'm on cloud 9 right now. You know what I mean? Okay, like we've done it, you know, like I've got these sponsors on board, cool. You know, it actually turned out that, you know, it didn't actually work out, you know, with sort of, you know, Nike, you know, like we actually parted ways, right? So, you know, I was then back to the drawing board to go, okay, like, you know, I still love this and like I'm still about this. Okay, how can I, you know, who am I going to now try to get on board, you know, like I'm just going to keep doing what I love, you know? So I kept making content, you know, I kept, you know, doing stuff, you know, looking for that next sponsor, you know, and then that leads us to, you know, the most recent event, King of the Court 7, right? It was at RMIT. We'd actually brought on board for that.
When was this?
So this was November 9 last year. So in the lead up to that, we actually brought on board, you know, our brand new sponsors, and like that was actually Champion, Australia and New Zealand. And, you know, that was crazy, man, because, you know, Champion's always been something that was in my wardrobe in terms of like, I look at like, you know, the hoodies are so comfortable, right? But I look at like Wu-Tang Clan, you know, New York, like they're all wearing Champion hoodies, you know, like that they've been in the game, you know? And like we brought Champion on board for King of the Court 7. Like we started something completely different. We did like Queen of the Court. So we brought out the girls. So just to sort of set the scene there, like for the most recent event, it was 36 teams. We had, you know, 28 men, eight women, all elite level. It was $10,000 prize money, you know, like we're going from $400, you know, number one, and we're at 10 bands now, right? We had like a hip hop, you know, show, pass the mic, live performance. You know, it was like, I think, you know, King of the Court 7 was really when, you know, I'd turn around and said, yeah, you know what, like I spent 6 years of my life, you know, trying to like build this thing. And I looked around and I was like, this is still probably like, you know, 1/5 of what I envisioned this to be. And I think you can relate to that from the conversations that we've had about, you know, the stake of that experience, right? It's like, you can get pretty happy with sort of what you're doing, and you can also, you know, step back and, you know, smell the roses. But, you know, when you really, really want something, like, and you really believe in something, you know, you're going to get a bit complacent and you go, you know what, nah, this, like, we can add layers to this, you know? And I think, you know, that's something where I'm at right now, where, you know, there's a lot of people, you know, that see King of the Court and go, damn, you know, like what he's doing is really cool. Like it's leveling up. It's sort of growing. And like us to look at it and go, it's not even a quarter of like what I believe, you know?
Yeah. I had someone call my stuff insane. The video is insane. It's insane about it.
Yeah.
It's me in my kitchen.
Yeah.
With 2 cameras. Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing insane about it.
But you say anyone can do it, but like how many people are doing it, right?
Yeah. Well, it comes back to that whole fear though. The fear of starting. And I think this whole conversation has been about just starting and just an evolvement, let's just say.
Yeah.
And I think that's powerful in itself.
For sure.
King of the Court 7, so that was November. You just told me on the phone that it's going to Japan now as well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Oh, and before as well. Yeah.
Yeah. No, correct. So, this June 28th, we're going to Tokyo. We're doing an event in Shinjuku. So, King of the Court.
Is that going to be bigger than King of the Court 6?
So, what it's going to be is it's going to be a qualifier event. Like, look, we've got plans to really sort of expand. Like, we want to go to multiple countries with this. You know, it's sort of funny, like, because there's 2 ways to look at it, right? You could go, okay, King of the Court Melbourne's doing great. Let's go to Sydney. Let's go to Adelaide. Let's go to Canberra. Let's go to Brisbane, right? Probably like the way that would make the most sense, right? However, at the last event, King of the Court 7, we had teams from Sunny Coast, Brisbane, Adelaide, Canberra, Tassie, Sydney, Tokyo, Paris that flew in for it to play off their own accord. And the prize money, as I said, look, it was 10 grand total, wasn't heaps. So I'm going, you know, if we're already getting this attention, right, let's bump up the prize money, you know, this year by a considerable amount. I can't actually disclose what that's going to be on here yet, but it's a considerable amount. And then, like, we're still going to have this sort of, you know, interest from Australia. But hey, why don't we just take it abroad? Like, why don't we go to Tokyo? Because Tokyo's population is a considerable amount more than Australia. A lot more people playing basketball. And we could run an event in Tokyo, then we go to Osaka, then go to Kyoto. Like we could then go to China. Like there's a lot of places in the Asia Pacific that love basketball, but I don't think it's going to be as big as King of the Court 6 or 7. But you know, you got to start somewhere,
100%,
right? And I think, you know, the main prize money, well, not prize money, the main prize for the event is the winning team wins a trip to King of the Court 8 World Streetball Finals. So we'll actually fly out the winners from there end of the year, November, to play against, you know, the Australian teams. So I think, you know, that's blending two cultures together. It's, you know, blending a movement, you know, promoting street ball. But Yeah, I think it's just, the idea that I'm even saying out loud right now, it's King of the Court Tokyo. Like that's, started in Carlton, King of the Court Carlton.
Do you need someone to cook steaks?
All the time.
Happy to come to Tokyo, mate.
All the time.
Happy to come.
I've heard that the Wagyu there is pretty good, no?
Mate, we'd have an absolute field day there. I asked a question about contentment to someone who came and sat in this chair. And his response to me was that the best people in the world have that mindset, which is the mindset that you'll never reach the top, or you'll never reach, let's just say, the vision that you have in your mind. And when you do, you'll be like, well, what's next? And I've seen that a lot with what I do. Is that something you struggle with?
No, for sure. I think there's always another ceiling. You know what I mean? And I just feel like, once you set a goal in your head and then you achieve that goal and you're like, damn, all right, I just did that. And it sort of makes you think, okay, well, I'm not stopping now. We've just achieved that. Okay, what was the next thing? And I think that's why something like, blue skying is so important, and for someone that doesn't know what blue skying is, it's like, if the grass is green, the sky is blue and the sun is beaming, where can you see this going? How far can you take this? If everything's perfect, how far can you take it? And I think that's something that I do on the regular. I go, okay, if money wasn't an issue, you know what I mean? If connections weren't an issue, if I knew everyone in the world and, I wanted to set something up, how would I do it? And just write it down and just go, okay, this is how I do it. This is who I'd want. And they go, okay, now step back down to earth. The sky might not be blue.
What are you writing down?
You know what I mean? What am I writing down? I'm writing down King of the Court, world street ball 3-on-3 finals, qualifiers all over the world, Asia Pacific, take it to Europe as well. Teams traveling to Melbourne to play outdoor. I'm imagining a league, look, I'm imagining a lot of things. I'm even imagining someone like, Shaquille O'Neal rolling down to King of the Court, I'm imagining that, King of the Court could be, one of, the biggest 3-on-3 street ball tournament in the Southern Hemisphere, if not the world.
Oh, is what in place at the moment, is that realistic?
Well, look, I think time, I put a lot of my time into this, you know what I mean? It's not like, I think, if you want something to flourish, you need to put time into it, right? And I think, as I sort of mentioned earlier, there's no blueprint for a street basketball tournament. There's no blueprint for okay, if I follow this manual, this is going to get me, to where I want to be, right? So I just think, I'm very confident in my own ability, and I'm confident in the amount of time that I put into something that, if I've got a goal that, I'm going to do my very best to get there. And look, as I said, I'm going to come out the other end and it's either going to work out for me or it won't. But at least I'm going to know and have that clarity to go, you know what, I made it onto the other end. I put everything on the table and it either worked or it didn't.
You spoke about health earlier as well. Do you, I'm probably the least healthiest I reckon I've ever been right now, but it's still probably better than a lot of people. But do you focus on health amongst all of this? Are you one of those people that put the blinkers down, just go, because you said you put a lot of time into it? Or do you focus on actually your health and well-being and how you're feeling? Health and well-being and how you're feeling, because, I think there's an element of hustle culture at the moment.
Yep.
And it's I'm all for it.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think it is like a ticking time bomb almost.
I think, look, health is just, it's incredibly important, you know what I mean? I feel like, do I sort of put a lot of emphasis on it? Look, I feel like I'm pretty lucky to, one, have a pretty fast metabolism. So I feel like, I like to eat, a lot of food, and, it hasn't, portrayed me in the wrong way yet, touch wood. But,
I'm the opposite.
But, I think, look, I'm lucky enough to be what my passion is in basketball is, it's a physical activity, it's movement, you know what I mean? If I'm ever really stressed, I just go down to the park and I just shoot. You know what I mean? If I'm feeling, okay, it's all a little bit too much, okay, cool. I'm going to go down to the park, I'm going to bring a ball, headphones in. Hopefully there's people down there to play some pickup. If not, I'm just going to shoot. You know what I mean? I'm just going to, go over to my head, And I think in terms of health, mental health is a pretty big one. And like, I think, people like us, I guess, we're probably pretty blessed in like the sense that, we can talk, we're pretty probably in touch with how we feel, and we don't really mind about, talking, you know what I mean? Like we can probably be put into like most rooms and like be able just to talk, whether or not, I guess, you're comfortable in that room, something else, right? But I think just being able to sort of, I'm not much of a writer. I don't really like to like, I'm usually, laptop or phone notes. I don't really write stuff down, I'm not old school like that. But, in my head, I'm just like, okay, what makes me less stressed is, I'll just go down to the park, I'll put some shots up, and I'll just think about everything in my head. Okay, why am I stressed out? I think it's great to be able to talk to someone about that, but, if you can sort of just, do something which makes you sort of happy, like at least not happy, stress-free, but then sort of just reel out, okay, why are you stressed out? Figure it out. Like that's going to do heaps for your mental health, and I think that's like a really important thing to, I guess, learn to, talk to other people, of course, but really, try to be comfortable in your own head, because mental health is something that unfortunately, you need to figure that out.
I think that replaying in your head is a big thing though. Like, especially for someone that, like us, like you said, has a vision and isn't there yet. And I'm probably in a position where I've been hustling for so long, but I haven't, I just haven't had that, what you said before, that brand or that someone believe in me, which is okay. Like I said, I'm going to keep going no matter what.
Keep doing it, yeah.
100%. But at the same time, that comes with an element of like overthinking and replaying things in your head. And
for sure.
But that sort of goes back to what you're saying. If you need a coping mechanism, you need something to deal with. Because if you don't,
for sure.
For someone like us that's overthinking in the best of times, like I'm sure you're the same. I'm sure you're always,
I think it's also hard because look, life's serious, right? You know what I mean? Life's pretty serious and it can be pretty unfair. But as well, like you've just got to really you got to take life for what it is, right? And it's like, you're not really guaranteed anything. You know what I mean? Anything that you want, you're probably going to have to work for it. You're probably going to have to go out of your way. Like you're not just going to stumble across something. You know what I mean? Like it's like, and like I see that in terms, brand deals and like, stuff like that, like you just got to keep being you, keep putting out, what makes you happy, your content, the way that you see life. And if that aligns with someone, like best believe, like they're going to reach out to you. But even if they don't reach out to you, as you just said, you keep doing it. You know what I mean? You keep doing it because that makes you happy.
100%. I heard someone say that if you're in that mindset and you're stressed and you're overwhelmed, you said the life has there's a time to life, I guess, or life's stressful. Like if you use the analogy that there was a hour clock, what are those things where the sand falls?
Hourglass.
Yeah, hourglass. If you use that analogy, everyone has an hourglass.
Yeah.
But that hourglass for me, like there could be something next week that happens. And if you're envisioning or you're imagining a life where you're 40 and 50, but you don't enjoy the present and your hourglass is ticking, but you don't know it yet because something's going to happen in a week.
Yeah.
And it's like, why am I so stressed in that current moment? And then you look at the reframe. I'm trying to reframe a lot of the hard times into the good times. It's like your hard time when you were building King of the Court 1 or just coming up with the idea is probably the reason why King of the Court 8 is going to be so good.
Yeah, true.
And it's like, well, and then it's shifting back to me. It's like the hard time of me trying to find someone to believe in me. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it's making me into the person that I need to be.
Yeah.
Do you have that? Or does that resonate with you?
Nah, for sure. I mean, I just feel like, nothing in life's probably going to be easy. You know what I mean? And like the things that are easy, anyone can do, And like, I think it's just, you need to go through those sort of times where you are unsure of yourself. You're unsure of what you're doing, and I think, that's one of my, I guess, key sort of messages is, like for older generations, something like university, that was the option. You know what I mean? Like that was the path to take, there wasn't internet, there wasn't these other avenues that, I guess, we've got now in today's day and age to, you know, pursue sort of different paths in life, you know, like whether there's money involved, whether there's not, you know, but, you know, I think, you know, happy, healthy, financially free, right? Those are the three sort of main things, yeah? And even if you can get 2 out of the 3, happy, healthy, you're doing pretty good. You know what I mean? If you can get the third, perfect. But I think, you know, if you really focus on being happy, healthy and like, you know, doing that, you know, whether there's, you know, some hurdles that you need to jump across, you know, to get there, you know, you'll get recognized, you know, for the energy that you sort of put out. And I think, yeah, that's a big one.
I saw you say create the things you wish existed.
Yeah, good one.
What does that mean to you?
Good one. Nah, honestly, that's a great one. Yeah, that's actually something that I actually had written down in one of the few notebooks I have, because as I said, I'm not really much to writing when I was a bit younger. Create the things you wish existed. I think that's probably one of the mottos of King of the Court for me, because I go, all right, like, you know, this is something that I sort of saw. I saw a vision, you know, through my love for the basketball, street ball, but I said, damn, there needs to be something like this. You know, there needs to be something like this, and there needs to be something like this in the north of Melbourne, like right here. Like I'm looking around at Carlton Gardens, I'm going, that chain net, that backboard, this setting, like there should be something here. Like, why isn't there something here, you know? And I guess that's literally the crux of what, you know, King of the Court was sort of born in. You know, it was something that I literally wish existed. It was like, there needs to be something like this here, because if there was, not only would I fucking love it, like other people are going to enjoy it too, you know? And I think, yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever be content or proud? Or I'm assuming there's an element of proud, but do you think you'll ever be sitting back and saying, wow, like how good is this?
I think I think for sure, I think to be clear, you know, right now, like, you know, I am proud of what King of the Court is, you know, and like I think you sort of need to have that sort of element of proudness, you know, not you know, being arrogant, you know, but like believe that what you're doing is dope. You know what I mean? Believe that what you're putting your time into, and like you best believe it if you're putting a lot of time into it, right? Because that means you don't have 2 feet in. If you don't believe that what you're doing is sick, you've only got 1 foot in that. You know what I mean? You need to fully, you know, take that dive. Like, this is dope. I think it's funny, right? There's actually like something that sort of happened, right, with every event that I've done. Every single event, there's a time where I just sort of stop, right? Well, since the 3rd event, I actually had one of my mates come up to me and said, man, like, you know, like that was dope out there. You know, did you see this? And he sort of pointed over at like 4 families with picnic blanket rugs set out with their kids playing. And I was just going, nah, like that's nuts. And then my mate said to me, said, look, you need to like, I know you're busy and you're running around, you're emceeing and you're making sure everyone's having a good time. But it's like, you need to just stop and like, look at what you're doing, bro. Like just stop and have a look around and take it in for a second, right? And like, he told me that after the 3rd event, and I was like, okay, I want to make an effort now for every event that I do, just to take a moment and just sort of just stop, take my sunnies off, you know, put the mic down and just look around, you know? And each event, you know, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, like there's just been a moment, you know, where I just look around. And I remember it was at the 7th one when I sort of just, like we had this dance activation come out, right? So we had these like dances, sort of like, you know, cheer squad come out, and they had this hectic as, you know, song routine that they came out to. And I remember I sort of passed it off to one of my other MCs, Mark, and said, yo, like, you know, intro them, sort this out. I'm just gonna sit down for a bit, you know? So I went and just like sat down in like, sort of inbuilt grandstand, right? And I remember I went and sat down, I sort of sat there, and I remember I sort of sat in between these 2 guys, like, you know, complete randoms. I sort of cast down, like, yeah, man, you know, sit down, whatever. Like, they know who I was, you know, I was just there. I sort of looked around and I was like, I saw like a lot of my friends there, and then I was like, damn, like, you know, it's good that they all sort of pulled up. And then I was like, but I don't really know, like, most of the people here. Like, these are all complete strangers to me. Like, whether they know me or not, like they obviously know King of the Court, which is great, but I'm just sort of sitting there going, damn, this is crazy, you know? And like, you know, it honestly made me like a little bit emotional sitting there, just sort of like, okay, like this is sort of, you know, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm trying to build, you know? And then it was pretty quick to, yo, Mitch, where you at? Okay, yeah, cool. Sun's back on, you know, got the mic, run back out there, get back to it, you know? But I think in the environment that I sort of work in, you know, with how go it is. So much stuff's happening. You know, street ball's a fast sport. You know, you don't really get many of those moments to sort of sit there. And I think, you know, I'm trying to make a big effort to sort of sit there and just take it in, you know.
What about when you're in your personal time, let's just say? Do you try and separate from it all and just say, like, I need, like, this is me time? You know?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line because, like, me time usually involves basketball. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know, me time usually involves me going down shooting some hoops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I'm always thinking, like I'm always thinking about, you know, the next play or, you know, the next sort of thing. You know, like, so I guess like I definitely do sort of take moments to sort of take it all in, but you know, there's always another ceiling. You know what I mean? There's always somewhere else that you can try and push it.
If we are having this conversation again in 5 years, what would make you happy or content?
5 years. I think if I could look at you in the eyes and tell you King of the Court is my full-time job and I don't need to do anything else to live, that's the end goal. Like, I don't need anything else. Like, if I can literally wake up every day, I'm my own boss, and it's, you know, running street basketball events, whether it's not even street basketball events, you know, whether this evolves into something else and, you know, I may work within the basketball scene somewhere, right? But if I can wake up and go, hey, all the hard work that I put in, you know, when I was younger to, like, you know, do this sort of passion project has now led me to a job that supports me, you know, my family, my friends, like that's the goal.
I think that has to be one of the biggest drivers, that freedom. And it's like you're almost willing to do. It's like a period in life, you know. Like if I was to do this with a family, or you were to do this with a family, would it be possible?
Like, I don't know. I think I try to make it work, you know, but I think it's
Like building though. Building is hard. Like if you're, it's a window in life. Like I'm assuming you're late 20s.
Yeah, 26.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, mid.
Yeah. But that is like the perfect time to grind.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm 29, so most of my mates are getting married now.
Yeah, okay, 30th next year then.
No, this year.
Oh, this year, okay,
August,
true.
August, which is it's a window. It's a window in time. And I had someone say he lives with two of his friends, and he said something so powerful. He said, "I'm so intrinsically aware that this is the best time of my life." And I was like, "Wow, that's unreal!" Like, like
crazy. All right.
But it's like I'm living with two mates. We're all having a crack. This is the best life probably ever going to be. Yeah. You know, and I don't know. Like
that's sick though, right?
Yeah. But and then people say, "Oh, like you're doing so well," or appreciate the journey and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, oh, I don't know. I can't really acknowledge that I'm doing a good thing. I don't know if you battle with that either.
Yeah. No, I think, look, we touched on it earlier a little bit, you know, about having that chip on your shoulder and like, you know, as much as it is good to have people going, what you're doing is incredible. Like, oh, like, you know, I've seen what you're doing online. I've seen what you're doing in person. Like, oh, like you should be so proud of yourself. What's next? It's like, as much as that, you know, positive, you know, affirmations are like great, but it's like, it puts the pressure on because you go, okay, it must be pretty good what I'm doing. How am I going to keep doing it? You know? And I think as well, the big thing is with those compliments that you get, with those words, it's like, no one really knows what's going on behind the scenes. No. They see what you're allowing them to see, right? And, you know, as a human, you never really want to, I guess, portray weakness, right? You know what I mean? Or you never really want to open the door with, I guess, you know, stuff that, you know, you might be struggling with within your business. Like that's just how it sort of works, right? So I think, yeah, it's, you know, it's always good to be told that you're doing a good thing, but, you know, you better keep on doing a good thing, right?
Behind the court, yeah, that's so true. I'm sure, I don't know if this is something you could say with confidence, but like, I can't think of anyone that would want to live the life that I live. Like, I say that because there's immense isolation. there's not much downtime. There's not much you time. I don't know if you struggle with all of that, but I don't know.
I mean, but like, do you also like, do you feel rewarding though? Like,
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like obviously it's a grind, right? Like it's a massive grind, but you know, do you also feel good knowing that you're grinding for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
I wouldn't be doing it if it
right.
didn't. Yeah.
But like, does that not, you know, overplay, I guess, you know, the at times isolation?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a deeper meaning behind it. And that's sort of the whole, I think if there's a meaning behind anything that you're doing, go.
For sure.
Give it a go.
For sure.
You'll never know.
Well, I mean, like that's the thing, right? You'll never know, right? Until you know. And it's like, it might not be what you want to hear. You might go all in. You might get to the other end and you might go, damn, this is not me. Like, I really tried. I thought it might work out. It's not me. But you know what? At least you know you can put a big X on it. That's it. It's done. You know? And I think that's probably almost, you know, one of the most rewarding feelings you can get, whether it works out, whether it doesn't, you know, because then at least you can write it off. It's done.
I want to commend you, man. What you're doing is amazing. And to do what you've done in a relatively short time frame and where you're going is pretty inspiring. So can't thank you enough for your time today.
No, appreciate you, mate. Look, I've been a long time listener, you know, of the sort of stake of that experience. And, you know, obviously need to throw some credit your way, you know, what sort of you're doing here, you know, giving people, you know, an opportunity to tell their story, but, you know, just inspire so many, you know, respect to you, Das.
It's one of those things where what you said before, like, and content, like putting out 6 minute, a reel, 6 minutes, try putting out a reel or a conversation for an hour and a half. That whole, I see a bigger vision for this podcast. But it's, I don't really, I just think it is pretty challenging to build like an audience, and it's growing each week, which is amazing. So it's great to hear that from you, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome, bro.
I got a quote here, and I guess we have sort of touched on it, but I think it'd be a good one for you to hear and just sort of provide an overview, I guess, of the journey and an insight into how it would have felt writing this.
Yep.
It really is a pinch myself moment to be able to have such well-renowned brands, Foot Locker and Nike, to be involved with the event, as well as an up-and-coming and soon-to-be very well-known company in Australia, Six-Man Basketball. Those who have seen the grassroots growth since the first event at Carlton Gardens know just how far we've come. Big thank you to Navin and Jade Delavante, for seeing the vision and believing in the cause. What does it feel like to hear them? Those words.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it, you know, for like the people that know, like the time that I've sort of put into this, you know, not the bells and whistles that you sort of see across social media, but, you know, what it was like, you know, getting up at 5 a.m. to go to Carlton Gardens to drag out some dressing tables and like some marquees and like just, you know, doing stuff that, you know, people don't sort of see, but like when I had no idea where it was going, to say, oh, yeah, we had a brand like Foot Locker, you know, Nike, Champion, NBA Australia. Like just to sort of say that these are the brands now that I work alongside, you know, it's crazy.
Anything's possible.
That's it.
Chase your dreams.
Yeah.
Good way to end it, brother. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, you too, bro.